My name is Courtney, and at 29 years old, I have been with my boyfriend James, 32, for about 2 years. It's been fine, good even. We have a rhythm. He's handsome, charming, and has this magnetic energy that pulls people in. But there's always been a thread of something else, a kind of transactional quality to his affection that I chose to ignore. Love makes you stupid, I guess. His 30th birthday was approaching, and the chatter started about a month ago. It was always going to be a big deal. James doesn't do small. His friend group, a tight-knit coven of 10 men who all seem to share the same brain and penchant for brunch, were buzzing. The other night, he sat me down on the couch. This was his serious talk face. Chin tilted down, eyes wide, hands clasped together on his knee. It's a look designed to make you feel like you're about to receive a sacred honor. "Babe," he started, his voice soft and buttery. "So, we've been talking about my birthday. We mint him in the coven. I brace myself, and we've decided we're going to Vegas." I nodded slowly. "Okay, sounds fun. What's the plan? This is where it gets good." He slid his phone across the coffee table. It was open to a page for a suite at the Wynn. The kind of suite with multiple rooms, a private bar, and a view that costs more than my car. "The guys and I fly out on Thursday and come back Sunday," he said, beaming. "It's going to be epic. Spa days, dinners at No, bottle service at Omnia." He listed a few more brand names that all sounded expensive. "Wow, that's a serious trip," I said. "Have you guys started booking stuff?" He gave a little laugh, a delicate puff of air. "Well, that's the other thing." He leaned in, placing his hand on my thigh. His touch felt less like affection and more like he was marking his territory. "You've had such a good year, and I know how much you love doing big romantic gestures. We were hoping you'd want to do something really special for me." For my gift, I kept my face perfectly still. "What did you have in mind?" "My gift," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You could book the flights for all of us, and the suite, a little birthday present from me and my besties." I just stared at him, all 11 of them to Vegas in a Wynn suite with flights on my dime. The sheer unadulterated audacity of it was almost impressive. I could see his friends in my mind's eye, a gallery of expectant faces, having already discussed it, planned it, and decided my role in their grand production. They weren't asking. They were informing me of my financial obligations. For a second, the world went quiet. I felt that familiar hot spike of anger in my chest. The feeling of being not just unappreciated, but actively assessed and exploited. It was the same feeling I'd had when he'd borrowed my credit card to buy a suit for a wedding and forgot to tell me it cost $800, or when he'd insisted I co-sign the lease on our apartment because his credit was a little messy, only for me to find out he'd stiffed his last 3 landlords. But I've learned that anger is a messy, inefficient emotion. It makes you sloppy. So I pushed it down deep, down until it was a cold, hard little stone in my gut. And then I smiled a nice, wide, accommodating smile. "Wow, babe," I said. "That's a big ask, but you know what? You only turned 30 once." His face lit up. Pure, unadulterated triumph. He thought he'd won. "So, you'll do it?" he squealed, throwing his arms around my neck. I patted his back. "Done," I said. And I meant it. Update. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a clear head and a high-speed internet connection. The week after the request was a masterclass in quiet, meticulous work. James was in heaven telling anyone who would listen how generous and amazing his girlfriend was. He and his friends were in a constant flurry of texts, sharing links to designer sneakers and ridiculously expensive watches. They were crafting their Instagram posts before they even stepped on a plane. They sent me a shared document with everyone's full legal names and dates of birth for the tickets. So helpful. My first stop was the Spirit Airlines website. I searched for one-way tickets to Las Vegas for Thursday just like he wanted, 11 of them. The price was gloriously, beautifully low. I clicked purchase. Next, the accommodations. The Wynn was a bit outside the budget I'd set for this particular gift, but I found some lovely alternatives. Plural. I booked 3 separate rooms at 3 separate, non-adjoining establishments, all located a healthy, inconvenient distance from the Strip and from each other. Room 1, one room with 2 double beds at a Motel 6, booked under James and Sam's names. Room 2, one room with 2 double beds at a Super 8, about 1.5 miles away from the Motel 6, booked under 2 of the other friends' names. Room 3, one room with 2 double beds at a Travelodge in another direction entirely. Booked under 2 more friends' names. That accounted for 6 of the 11 guys. The other 5, no rooms at all. I figured they could work it out amongst themselves. The reservations were for 3 nights. Checking in on Thursday. Paid in full. I then forwarded the flight confirmations to the entire group in a single email. Subject, Vegas trip. Hey everyone, tickets are booked. See attached. Get ready for a wild birthday weekend for James. P.S. Traveled light with just a bare fare to save money for the fun stuff. You can add bags at the airport if you need to. The email went out at 10 p.m. on Wednesday night. Their flight was at 6 o'clock a.m. the next morning. I didn't hear anything for about an hour. Then my phone started vibrating. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. The barrage of texts began shortly after. James, call me right now. What the fuck is this Spirit Airlines one-way? Are you kidding me? This is humiliating. And where is the hotel confirmation? You said you were handling it. You said done. Me? I did handle it. You're all going to Vegas. James, you sent the hotel info to Sam. A Motel 6. 1 room. What were the other 9 of us supposed to do? Me. Not just 1 room. I sent the other confirmations to the guys whose names they are under. I got 3 rooms to give you all some privacy. You should coordinate. This was the beauty of the plan. He had no central information. The other guys with reservations were now getting their own separate, confusing emails. The ones without reservations were getting nothing. The group chat must have been pure chaos. My phone lit up with texts from numbers I didn't even have saved. Random number. Hey, this is Mike, James's friend. I didn't get a hotel confirmation. Where am I staying? Another random number. My confirmation says a Super 8. Is this a joke? James's follow-up text was a masterpiece of rage. James, are you insane? You split us up into different crackhead motels and you only booked for 6 people. 5 of us don't have a room. This is a nightmare. I believe this is what they call a logistical problem. I turned my phone on silent. I had to get some sleep. I had a big day ahead of me. Thursday was moving day. Thursday morning was quiet, blissfully quiet. I woke up at 7 a.m., made coffee, and looked around the apartment. It's a 2-bedroom, and when I moved in, James had immediately claimed the 2nd bedroom as his closet office. It was less of an office and more of a shrine to fast fashion, sneakers, watches, and gadgets. James and his friends, in their pre-Vegas frenzy, had left the apartment looking like a tornado had a seizure in it. Clothes, tech boxes, and empty energy drink cans were everywhere. I took extensive photos for documentation. My landlord, a stern but fair man named Richard, was my first call. I knew from past experience he hated tenant drama, so I approached this carefully. Richard, good morning. It's Courtney from 3B. Hope you're well. Everything all right? Mostly I'm calling to ask about procedure. Really? Go on. James, who is on the lease with me, has informed me he is relocating and has vacated the apartment. It's been left in a pretty rough state. I was wondering what the formal process is for handling property left behind by a tenant who has vacated. Richard was skeptical. What do you mean relocating? Did he give you written notice? No, a verbal confirmation. He's currently in Las Vegas. I said, look, I know he's on the lease, but he's made it clear he isn't coming back to the apartment. I just want to ensure I'm following the lease agreement to the letter. Clause 7B. I'm thinking about abandonment of property. I'm happy to send you photos of the current state of the unit. By framing it as a procedural question and referencing the specific lease clause, I wasn't a frantic girlfriend. I was a concerned tenant trying to follow the rules. Richard grunted. All right, send the photos. The rule is you need to give him formal written notice to collect his things. 30 days. Send it via registered mail so you have proof. Keep me in the loop. I immediately drafted a formal notice and sent it to James's email and to his parents' address via registered mail. The paper trail had begun. Meanwhile, in Vegas, the social fabric of the coven had been shredded. The airport was a disaster. The bare fare note meant and they were all hit with massive last-minute baggage fees they hadn't budgeted for. Then upon landing, the room situation detonated. The 6 with rooms refused to let the 5 without rooms stay with them, as it would get them kicked out. James, Sam, and the two other guys who ended up in the Motel 6 and Super 8 rooms apparently went ahead while the rest of the group imploded. I learned later that some of them booked a flight straight back home on their own dime, screaming at James over the phone from the airport. My phone was a wasteland of venomous texts from James. James, I hate you. You have ruined my 30th birthday. My friends are fighting with me because of you. We have no money. We have no way to get home. You need to send me money right now. You owe me. Me? I don't think I do. I paid for the trip you demanded. I can't help it if you don't like the accommodations or the company. His next move was predictable. He called Richard, our landlord, and played the victim. I was the controlling girlfriend who had locked him out. He cried, probably a very convincing performance. Richard called me immediately after. Courtney, James just called me in tears. Said you've illegally evicted him. That's odd because he's in Vegas, I said calmly. Richard, I haven't changed any locks. All I did, as we discussed, was send him a formal notice to collect his abandoned property after he informed me he was vacating. I have the postal receipt right here. I also filed a police report this morning. A police report for some stolen items? Yes. My noise-canceling headphones, my tablet, a few other things. They went missing right around the time he left. I didn't name him as a suspect, of course. I just reported the theft to have it on record. A beat of silence on Richard's end. I could almost hear him mentally shredding James's sob story. He was now armed with my paper trail versus James' hysterical phone call. I see. Well, sounds like you're handling it. Carry on, Courtney. Final update. It's been about a month. The dust has for the most part settled. James and the few who stuck it out in Vegas made it back about a week after they left. How? From what I can piece together, James's parents had to wire the money, not just for the flights home on Spirit, but also to settle bills with the motels. Apparently, one of the rooms incurred a cleaning fee due to an explosive argument involving a bottle of cheap vodka and a toiletries bag. The police never showed up at my door. Instead, I got a flurry of demands via email for his belongings. He sent me a 10-page list of items, some of which I'm fairly certain never existed. He wanted me to pack it all in boxes and leave it with the doorman of his parents' very expensive apartment building. I replied with a polite email. Subject, re your belongings. Body. James, as per my formal notice dated, date. You have until the 15th to collect your property at a mutually agreed upon time. I am available Tuesday or Thursday evenings between 6 and 8 p.m. Please let me know which day works for you. P.S. I also have a demand letter for you detailing outstanding expenses. Let me know the best address to send it to. The demand letter was my favorite part. I had hired professional cleaners. I had to replace the locks, a prudent security measure. And then there was the matter of his half of the rent and utilities for the final month. All in, he owed me a little over $2,000. He ignored my email. A few days later, he showed up at the apartment building with Sam unannounced while I was at work. They tried to sweet-talk the concierge into letting him up. Having been given a heads-up and a crisp $50 bill from me, the concierge politely refused. They caused a scene. The building manager was called. His deadline of the 15th came and went. I paid a couple of movers to haul all his stuff to a storage unit. I then paid the fee for the first month. Then I filed a case in small claims court for the $2,000 he owed me, plus the cost of the movers, and the first month of storage. I attached copies of the lease, the photos of the trashed apartment, the cleaning bill, the locksmith's invoice, and our text exchange where he clearly stated his intention to have me pay for everything. The pièce de résistance was a screenshot from Sam's Instagram story, one he'd posted before the meltdown, captioned, Vegas bound to celebrate our boy James, so spoiled by his girl Courtney. The court date is in 2 months. He'll either have to pay me or not show up and have a judgment against him, which will do wonders for his already messy credit. The social fallout has been biblical. The coven is no more. It's shattered. The friends who never even got a room blame him for the entire fiasco. The 2 other friends who went with him are furious that they ended up broke in a Vegas motel. They have all since blocked him. His reputation as a charismatic leader has been replaced by that of a manipulative user who crashed and burned. He tried to post a long, rambling my side of the story on social media, but without the full context, it just made him sound unhinged. As for me, the apartment has never been cleaner. The second bedroom is now a functioning home gym. It's quiet. Sometimes I'll admit it's a little too quiet. There's a brief pang of something, not loss exactly, but the ghost of what I thought I had. It was a comfortable illusion, but then I think of that couch conversation, his expectant, entitled face, and the feeling passes. I don't think he's learned a thing. In his story, he will always be the victim, and I will be the villain. People like James don't have epiphanies. They just look for a new audience, and that's fine. I didn't do this to teach him a lesson. I did it because when someone pushes you methodically and without remorse into a corner, sometimes the only way out is to push back with cold, hard, documented reality. He wanted me to pay for fantasy. Instead, I just gave him what he deserved, a budget-friendly trip back to the real world. One way, no baggage, and a court summons. After the dust settled, life returned to a rhythm that was quieter, simpler, and infinitely more under my control. The apartment no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like home. The second bedroom, once a shrine to James's vanity and chaos, was now a functioning gym. Every dumbbell, yoga mat, and resistance band was mine, my energy, my order. It was silent, almost eerily so, and sometimes I caught myself staring at the space where James's chaos had once lived. A part of me missed the noise, the drama, but only briefly. Mostly, I felt relief. I thought about the last interaction with James, that smirk, the way he thought the world revolved around him. His friends, now fractured and resentful, had abandoned the coven. Sam had distanced himself entirely after the Vegas debacle, furious not just at James, but at the entire situation he'd been dragged into. James's parents were embarrassed, having had to bail him out financially and logistically, and he had no one left to cheer him on. In a way, I admired the precision of it all, the chaos he'd caused, the paper trail I'd left, and the inevitable collapse. Every text I'd received from him in those weeks replayed in my mind. The entitled demands, the furious outbursts, the desperate attempts to make me feel guilty. And yet, as I looked around the quiet apartment, I felt a strange satisfaction. I hadn't yelled, I hadn't lost control. I had methodically, calmly, and legally set boundaries and consequences, and in doing so, I'd regained a sense of authority over my life that I hadn't realized I'd lost. The court date loomed in my calendar, a final punctuation mark on the saga. I didn't fear it. I had documentation, receipts, texts, and evidence, all pointing clearly to responsibility and accountability. It wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness and protecting what was rightfully mine. The thought that James might finally understand, even if only partially, the consequences of his entitled behavior was almost comforting. Life didn't stop for this drama, of course. Work carried on, friends still called, weekends came and went, but there was a clarity now in my relationships that hadn't existed before. I recognized the people who were reliable, kind, and mutually respectful, and those who weren't. James had revealed the latter clearly. The fallout with his friends only reinforced the lesson. Loyalty and friendship are not guaranteed, and entitlement can erode everything. I often reflected on the illusion I'd carried for 2 years, that love could excuse behavior that was selfish, manipulative, or disrespectful. James's birthday request had been the ultimate test, and it had failed spectacularly for him. And though I sometimes felt a flicker of sadness for the years lost to this dynamic, it was tempered by a deep understanding. Boundaries are necessary, and self-respect is non-negotiable. Evenings now were peaceful. I would brew tea, stretch in the new home gym, and listen to music without interruption. Sometimes I'd glance at my phone and notice a text from Sam, or from another mutual friend, checking in. They were tentative, cautious, perhaps aware that alliances had shifted. But it didn't matter. I had reclaimed the space that James had turned into chaos, and in doing so, I reclaimed myself. There were moments, brief and fleeting, where I imagined James reading the judgment against him, feeling the sting of accountability. Not gloating, just a quiet acknowledgement that the world didn't bend to him, and that consequences were real. And then I'd let it go, turning back to my quiet apartment, the sunlight streaming across the floor, the empty space once filled with drama, now a canvas for calm. The apartment was cleaner, the air lighter, and the silence restorative. I had a newfound appreciation for order, for the ability to act deliberately rather than react emotionally. Every object in its place, every decision made with intention. This was my life, finally uninterrupted by the chaos of entitlement. Occasionally, I would scroll through social media, a voyeur to James's ongoing attempts to spin his narrative, but the posts, the stories, the desperate justifications, they no longer had power over me. I didn't comment. I didn't respond. I simply observed the unraveling from a distance, detached and secure. He would always cast himself as the victim, but I had seen behind the mask. I knew the truth, and that knowledge was liberating. The court documents, the movers' invoices, the lease clauses, they were more than paper. They were proof of the boundaries I had set, the justice I had calmly executed. And as I organized my home, returned my life to order, and prepared for the court day, I realized something vital. This wasn't about James, or his friends, or the Vegas fiasco. It was about me, my clarity, my control, my life. I had learned something essential about human nature. Charm, charisma, and entitlement can mask selfishness for a time. But reality has a way of catching up. What I had done wasn't cruel, it was necessary. And in that necessity, I discovered strength I hadn't fully recognized in myself. The home gym became my sanctuary. Each morning, as I lifted weights or stretched into the quiet, I was reclaiming more than physical space. I was reclaiming mental space, emotional space, a piece of myself that had been crowded out by drama, manipulation, and expectation. And with each passing day, the peace settled deeper, replacing the residual tension with a quiet, steady confidence. Looking back, I could trace every moment that led to this clarity. The audacious request for a luxury Vegas birthday, the chaos at the airport, the fractured friendships, the calls to the landlord, the police report, the storage unit, the court filings, it all converged into one singular lesson. Life respects boundaries, and people respond to structure and consequence. Those who exploit, manipulate, or demand without reciprocity will ultimately face the reality of their actions. James may never learn humility, and perhaps he will continue to frame himself as a victim to any new audience. That didn't matter. What mattered was that I had finally drawn a line, enforced it, and restored equilibrium. The apartment, now a sanctuary of order, was a testament to that victory. And in that victory, I discovered a deeper truth. Freedom is as much about quiet control as it is about chaos averted. Even now, sometimes I catch myself smiling quietly at the memory of that couch conversation, his wide, expectant grin, his unspoken entitlement. The anger, the frustration, the audacity, they are now just markers of a chapter closed. I feel neither bitterness nor triumph. I feel resolution. I learned that love doesn't excuse exploitation, that generosity isn't a currency to be leveraged, that patience and meticulousness can outmatch arrogance and demand. And most importantly, I learned that protecting yourself, your space, and your sanity is not selfish, it's survival. The court date approaches, but the anticipation is no longer anxiety. It's calm preparation. The paperwork is organized, the evidence undeniable. James will have to answer, and the system will enforce what personal charm could not. I no longer fear confrontation. I anticipate its clarity. At night, when the apartment is silent, I sometimes reflect on how much has changed. The absence of chaos is deafening in the best way possible. I no longer wake to entitled demands or frantic texts. I wake to peace, order, and the knowledge that my boundaries are respected. James's story, his outrage, his illusions of control, they exist in another world. My reality is quiet, methodical, and mine. And in that quiet, I finally understand what it means to reclaim not just a home, but a life. The saga that began with a birthday request, a Vegas trip, and entitlement has concluded not with drama or revenge, but with resolution, order, and quiet triumph. My apartment is cleaner, my life steadier, and my spirit unburdened. James got a trip back to reality. I got my freedom. And in that exchange, everything I lost in expectation was more than recovered in clarity, peace, and self-respect.